6 weeks before my wedding, my fiancé looked me straight in the eye and said, "My ex is my best woman. If not, there's no wedding." Not shouted, not emotional. He said it calmly, like he was offering me a reasonable compromise. So I smiled, met his gaze, and said, "Your choice." And then I went home and canceled everything. At the time, people thought I was being dramatic, cold, petty. They said I was insecure, that I was threatened by another woman, that I was throwing away 4 years over a title. But what they didn't understand, what I understood immediately, was that this wasn't about a wedding role. It was a confession. Because when someone is willing to burn down an entire future just to keep their ex standing beside them while they exchange vows, they are telling you exactly where you stand. I remember the silence after he said it, the low hum of the refrigerator, the soft tick of the clock on the wall. My heart didn't race, my hands didn't shake, and that scared me more than anger ever could. 4 years together, 1 year engaged, a venue booked, invitations sent, families already counting down. And in one sentence, he made it clear that my boundaries were optional. His ex-girlfriend, the woman he dated for 3 years before me, the woman who cheated on him with her roommate, the woman who somehow never disappeared from our lives. Birthdays, holidays, late-night calls just to talk, random drop-ins when she needed emotional support. I kept swallowing that discomfort, telling myself it was what being secure looked like, until he demanded she stand next to him while he promised his life to me. That's when it clicked. I wasn't his priority, I was his safe option. So I accepted his ultimatum. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I didn't negotiate. I canceled the venue. I refunded the guests. I documented every dollar. And I sent him a bill for his half. That's when the real chaos started. We met 4 years ago at a friend's engagement party. Ironic, considering how everything ended. I wasn't looking for anything serious that night. I'd come straight from work, hair still pinned up, feet aching in heels, I regretted by the second drink. He stood near the bar, laughing too loudly at something someone said, completely unbothered by whether anyone was watching. There was an ease to him, a confidence that didn't ask for permission. He offered to get me a drink. I said no at first. He got it anyway. We talked for hours, about work, about bad first dates, about how neither of us believed in forever the way people sold it online. When the party ended, neither of us wanted to leave. He walked me to my car, hesitated, smiled like he was deciding something. "I'd like to see you again," he said. And he did, consistently, intentionally. He remembered small things, how I took my coffee, the book I was halfway through, the name of my sister's dog. He showed up when he said he would, introduced me to his friends early, made space for me in his life without me having to ask. That mattered to me. By year 2, we were living together, splitting bills, building routines, Sunday mornings with groceries and playlists, late nights folding laundry and talking about the future like it was something solid we were walking toward together. He proposed on a quiet weekend away. No crowd, no cameras, just the ring, his hands shaking slightly, his voice steady when he asked. I said yes without hesitation. The wedding planning came easily at first. Venue, catering, guest list. We split the costs evenly, something he insisted on. "We're partners," he said. "This should be shared." And then there was his ex. He told me about her early on. 3 years together in college. Intense. Messy. Ended badly when she cheated with a roommate. I'd believed the story was finished, that they'd grown past it. But she never fully disappeared. She was always there. Birthdays, holidays, random Tuesday nights when my fiancé just needed to talk. Every time I felt that quiet discomfort in my chest, I pushed it down. Because everything else looked right. Because I trusted the man who asked me to marry him. Because I believed that when someone chose you, really chose you, the past stayed where it belonged. I didn't realize then that I was slowly training myself to accept being uncomfortable for the sake of peace. And peace, I would learn, is often the most expensive thing you can buy. The first time I realized something was wrong, it wasn't dramatic. There was no screaming. No suspicious messages lighting up his phone. No lipstick stains or late-night excuses. It was subtler than that. It was the way his ex, the woman he swore was just a friend, was always already included in plans before I even knew they existed. "She's coming too," my fiancé would say casually, like it was an afterthought. Or worse, like it should have been obvious. Birthday dinners, holiday gatherings, weekend trips that somehow turned into group events without discussion. I started noticing the small things. The way his face softened when her name came up. The way he'd step into another room to take her calls. Never secretive, but never fully open either. The way I'd be mid-sentence and realize he wasn't really listening, his attention drifting somewhere else. Once, I asked, carefully. Do you think it's a lot? How close you still are? He didn't look offended. He looked surprised. Why would it be? He said. We've been through everything together. Everything. Including a 3-year relationship, including betrayal, including a kind of intimacy that doesn't just evaporate because time passes. I nodded, smiled, let it go. Because every time I brought up a boundary, he reframed it as insecurity. You know how important she is to me. You don't want to be that person. I thought you trusted me. And I did. Or at least I trusted the version of him I wanted to believe in. Wedding planning should have brought us closer. Instead, it became another place where his ex quietly took up space. She weighed in on decorations, on music, on which friends should be seated near the front. I remember standing in the kitchen one night, looking at our spreadsheet of expenses, $28,000 total, split right down the middle, and realizing something unsettling. This wedding was being built to accommodate everyone, except me. The final warning came a week before the conversation that ended everything. We were talking about the wedding party, bridesmaids, groomsmen, positions, photos. He said it casually, scrolling through his phone. I think she'd be perfect as my best woman. I laughed at first. I thought it was a joke. You're kidding, I said. He looked up, didn't smile. No, I'm serious. My stomach dropped, not because of jealousy, but because of clarity. Because suddenly, all the compromises, all the swallowed words, all the unease lined up into a single, undeniable truth. I wasn't being unreasonable. I was being replaced, emotionally, right in front of my own wedding. And he was about to ask me to smile through it. The conversation that ended my engagement didn't start as a fight. It started the way all the worst ones do. Quiet, rehearsed, already decided before I even sat down. It was a Tuesday evening. Ordinary. Forgettable. I was still in my work clothes, shoes kicked off by the door, scrolling absently on my phone when my fiancé said, "Can we talk about something important?" That tone, the careful calm, the one people use when they already know how the conversation is supposed to end. I looked up. He was sitting straight, hands clasped, eyes focused somewhere past my shoulder. "What's going on?" I asked. He took a breath, slow, deliberate. "I've been thinking about the wedding party." My stomach tightened, just slightly. "Okay." He nodded, like he was encouraging himself. "I want my best woman to be someone who really knows me, someone who's been through everything with me." I already knew. My body knew before my mind caught up. "And that's," I said. "Her," he said, "my ex." There it was, not softened, not eased in, just dropped into the space between us like a brick. I stared at him, waiting for the follow-up. The smile, the "I'm kidding," it never came. "You mean your ex-girlfriend?" I said slowly. "Yes," he replied, like that clarified things. "You want the woman you dated for 3 years." I continued, my voice steady, despite the way my pulse thudded in my ears, "to stand next to you while we get married." "She's my closest friend," he said quickly. "You know that." "I know she's around," I said. "That's not the same thing." He shifted, irritation flickering across his face. "This isn't about jealousy." "No," I said, "it's about boundaries." That's when his expression hardened. "This is non-negotiable," he said. "Either she's my best woman, or there's no wedding." The words hung there, heavy and unreal. I waited for my chest to tighten, for my throat to close, for panic. Instead, there was only stillness. "You're serious," I said. "Yes, after 4 years together. After a year of being engaged. After deposits paid, invitations sent, families planning flights." He was willing to walk away from all of it. For her. I leaned back slightly, studying him like he was someone I'd just met. "So let me get this straight," I said quietly. "You're asking me to stand at the altar, promise my life to you, while your ex stands next to you, smiling in every photo." "She's not a threat," he snapped. "You're making this weird." "I'm not making anything weird," I said. "You are." He shook his head, frustration rising. "You're being controlling." There it was, the label, the pivot. "I'm being clear," I corrected. "There's a difference." Silence stretched between us. Finally, I spoke. "Okay," I said. He blinked. "Okay?" "Your choice," I repeated calmly. "Her as your best woman, or no wedding. You decide." Confusion crossed his face. He hadn't expected that. "I already told you my decision," he said. I nodded. So did I. I stood up. "No wedding it is?" He laughed sharply. "You're being ridiculous. You're really going to cancel our wedding over this?" I'm not canceling anything, I said, walking toward the hallway. You just did. Wait, he called. You don't mean that. But I already did. I went straight into my home office, opened my laptop, and started sending emails. Because the thing about ultimatums is this: people who make them never expect you to accept the consequences. And that night I did. I didn't cry when I closed the door to my home office. That surprised me. I sat down at my desk, stared at my laptop screen, and waited for the wave to hit. The panic, the regret, the sudden urge to run back and soften everything. It never came. Instead, there was a strange, unsettling calm, the kind that settles in when a decision has already been made somewhere deeper than thought. I opened my email. The first message went to the venue. We'd booked a historic mansion just outside the city, white stone walls, a garden everyone had already commented on. I typed carefully, choosing words that sounded professional instead of personal. When the coordinator replied, sympathetic, efficient, I felt a small, sharp relief. 60% of the deposit refundable. Not ideal, but survivable. Next, the caterer. Partial refund. About half. The photographer was kinder than expected. Full refund minus a small processing fee. The band wasn't refundable at all, but they offered to hold the booking for a future date. I almost laughed at that. Future date. By the time I finished contacting every vendor, it was past midnight. The house was silent, except for the low hum of my laptop fan and my own breathing. Slow, steady, deliberate. That's when my phone started lighting up. Missed calls. Texts stacking on top of each other. From him. Can we talk? You're being extreme. This isn't what I meant. Answer me. I didn't. I wasn't punishing him. I was protecting myself from being talked out of my own clarity. At around 2 a.m, I drafted the hardest email of the night. Dear friends and family, due to irreconcilable differences that have recently come to light, my fiancé and I have decided to cancel our upcoming wedding. We apologize for any inconvenience this may cause. If you've already made travel arrangements, please contact me directly, and I'll do my best to help offset any non-refundable costs. Thank you for your understanding. I stared at it for a long moment before hitting send. 150 people. Just like that. When I finally closed my laptop, my hands shook, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from the knowledge that something irreversible had just happened. The next morning, he showed up at my apartment. I'd expected that too. He still had a key, but I'd installed a door chain the night before. When I opened the door just enough to see his face, his expression crumpled in disbelief. What did you do? He demanded. I canceled the wedding, I said calmly, like we agreed. I didn't agree to this, he snapped. My cousins are calling. My mom is freaking out. You told everyone we're not getting married. We're not, I replied. You made that clear. I didn't mean it like that, he said quickly. I was just trying to make you understand how important this is to me. And I understood perfectly, I said. You prioritized your ex over our marriage. You're twisting this, he said. She's just a friend. A friend you were willing to lose everything over, I said quietly. That's when he started crying. Not the composed kind, the messy, desperate kind. Please, he said, we can fix this. Maybe she doesn't have to be my best woman. Maybe she can just be in the wedding party. I tilted my head slightly. Oh, I said. So now it's negotiable. I was emotional, he said. You know how I get. Yes, I replied. I do. I reached for my phone, opened the spreadsheet I'd made while the house was still dark. Here's the bill, I said, holding it up. Your half of the cancellation losses comes to $5,500. I'll need that within 30 days. The color drained from his face. You want me to pay you? I want you to take responsibility, I said. We agreed to split costs. I'm not absorbing your half because you chose to issue an ultimatum. This is insane, he snapped. I'm not paying you anything. Then I'll take you to small claims court, I said evenly. I have every receipt, every confirmation, and plenty of messages where you acknowledge we were splitting everything equally. He stared at me like he was seeing a stranger. You're serious. Dead serious. He left without another word, slamming the door so hard the chain rattled. I stood there for a long moment after he was gone, my heart finally starting to pound. Not with regret. With certainty. The escalation was fast, violent in its own quiet way. Within 48 hours, the story stopped being just ours and started belonging to everyone else. The first call came from his mother. She'd always been polite with me. Warm, even. The kind of woman who hugged a second too long and called me sweetheart like it meant something. Not this time. I don't understand what you think you're doing, she said, skipping pleasantries entirely. He's devastated. I'm sure he is, I replied calmly. This is all a misunderstanding, she continued. He just wanted his best friend standing beside him. You're blowing this out of proportion. His best friend is his ex, I said. That's not a misunderstanding. Oh, honey, she sighed. That was years ago. You're letting insecurity ruin something beautiful. There it was. The narrative had already been written. I didn't ruin anything, I said. He gave me an ultimatum. I accepted it. You don't do that to someone you love, she snapped. You compromise. I did compromise, I replied, for 4 years. She hung up on me. The next wave came online. A post, carefully worded, emotionally vague, just enough implication to let people fill in the blanks. Something about strong women being punished for having close friendships, about toxic insecurity, about control disguised as boundaries. The comments poured in. Friends I barely recognized chimed in with support, for him. People who'd never asked me how I felt suddenly had opinions about my character. My phone buzzed nonstop. What happened? Is it true you freaked out? You know you could have handled this better. I answered the first few messages the same way. He demanded his ex be his best woman. I said no. He said no wedding. I accepted. Most people went quiet after that. A few didn't. I stopped responding to those. And then, because apparently this situation hadn't reached maximum audacity yet, his ex showed up. Not at my door. At my office. Security called to ask if I was expecting a visitor. I said yes, not because I wanted to see her, but because I wanted to understand how far this was going to go. She walked in like she belonged there, confident, smiling too easily, the kind of woman who still lived in the version of herself that peaked years ago. We need to talk, she said, woman to woman. No, I said, not bothering to stand. We really don't. You're hurting him, she continued anyway. You know that, right? I laughed. I couldn't help it. I didn't give him an ultimatum, I said. He gave one to me. You're acting threatened, she said. He chose you. He was marrying you. And still demanded you stand beside him while he did it, I replied. That's not choosing me. She scoffed. You're throwing everything away over pride. Pride? I said. He chose you over our marriage. No, she corrected smugly. He chose friendship. Mature people don't center their exes at their weddings, I said. And they definitely don't demand it. Her smile faltered. That wedding, I continued evenly, is canceled. The vendors have been notified, the guests informed, the deposits lost. Her eyes widened slightly. Wait, she said. You actually canceled everything? Yes, she swallowed. How much did you lose? About 11,000 total, I said. I'm billing him for his half. Her face drained of color. His half, she repeated. Yes. She opened her mouth, closed it. Then I saw it, the calculation, the sudden shift. Oh, I said softly. He asked you to help pay, didn't he? Her silence confirmed everything. She stood abruptly. You're unbelievable, she snapped. He deserves better. Then he should be with you, I said. Oh, wait. She left without another word. 2 days later, he called me screaming. Actually screaming. You told her about the money, he shouted. I didn't tell her anything, I replied calmly. She figured it out when she realized choices have consequences. She was going to help me pay, he yelled. I nearly dropped my phone. You expected your ex, I said slowly, to pay for half of our canceled wedding. She offered, he insisted. She felt bad. About what? I asked. Helping you sabotage your engagement? This is your fault, he snapped. If you'd just accepted her as my best woman. No, I cut in. If I'd accepted that, there would have been no line left to draw. Silence. Then quieter. You don't understand our bond. You're right, I said. I don't understand prioritizing an ex over your future spouse. I hung up. The next call came from someone unexpected. His ex-boyfriend. Yes, she had one. He introduced himself carefully, apologetically, told me he'd suspected something for months, that when the wedding money came up, he demanded to see the messages. They weren't appropriate, he said. Not exactly cheating, but not innocent either. He dumped her on the spot. I wanted to thank you, he said softly. You saved me from years of confusion. After that, I stopped feeling angry. I started feeling free, because when chaos reaches that level, clarity finally wins. And the truth was no longer just mine. The noise eventually died down. Not because the situation resolved, but because there was nothing left to argue about. The wedding was canceled, the deposits were gone. The story had already been told and retold in versions I didn't recognize myself in. And when the adrenaline faded, that's when the weight finally landed. It happened late one night, almost 2 weeks after everything blew up. I was alone in the apartment, our apartment, technically, sitting on the edge of the bed with the lights off. The city outside the window hummed the way it always had, indifferent and steady, while my chest felt hollow in a way I wasn't prepared for. This wasn't the dramatic kind of pain people expect after a breakup. There were no tears at first, no sobbing on the bathroom floor, no impulsive texts typed and deleted, just silence and exhaustion. 4 years doesn't disappear just because the ending is justified. I kept replaying moments I'd once thought were proof of love, reframing them through a different lens. I wondered how long I'd been teaching myself to accept less than I deserved. That thought hurt more than the breakup itself, because it meant I'd participated in my own erasure. I walked into the living room and noticed something I hadn't touched since the fight. The ring box, still sitting on the shelf where I'd placed it that night. I picked it up. The weight surprised me, not physically, but emotionally. That ring had represented certainty, a future I'd defended to friends, to family, to myself. And now it felt like evidence of how wrong I'd been. I didn't put it on, I didn't cry over it. I just sat there, turning it slowly between my fingers, and let myself feel the grief I'd been postponing. Not grief for him. Grief for the version of myself who believed love meant endurance at all costs. The messages started coming again, quieter now, more cautious. Are you okay? This must be hard. You didn't deserve this. I appreciated them. I really did. But none of them could answer the question that had started echoing in my own head. How did I miss this? That night, doubt crept in for the first time. Not about the decision, but about myself. I wondered if I'd been too rigid, too uncompromising, if maybe everyone else was right and I'd thrown away something salvageable out of pride. I imagined an alternate version of events. Me smiling through the wedding photos. Me swallowing the discomfort. Me telling myself this is fine while his ex stood close enough to touch him. The image made my stomach turn. That's when I understood the darkest part of the whole thing. I wasn't grieving the relationship I lost. I was grieving the future I almost trapped myself inside. That realization didn't bring relief. It brought fear. Because once you see the truth, you can't unsee it. And you can't go back to the comfort of denial. I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, my heart finally pounding, my breath shallow, my hands clenched against the sheets. Not because I wanted him back, but because I was standing at the edge of something unfamiliar. A life where I no longer measured my worth by how much discomfort I could tolerate. A life without the identity I'd built around us. And that kind of emptiness, the kind that follows clarity, is its own kind of darkness. The turning point didn't come with an apology. It came with the truth, quiet, unpolished, and impossible to argue with. It started with a phone call I almost didn't answer. His father. We'd always gotten along. He was the steady one in that family. Calm, observant. The kind of man who listened more than he spoke. Can we talk, he asked, just to understand. We met at a small cafe near his office. Neutral ground. He looked older than I remembered. Tired. Like someone who'd been cleaning up the same emotional mess for decades. I told him everything. The ultimatum. His insistence on making his ex his best woman. The cancellations. The money. The aftermath. He didn't interrupt. When I finished, he sat back and exhaled slowly. He gets this from his mother, he said finally. The ultimatums, the pressure, the emotional leverage. I blinked. You knew? Oh yes, he said. I warned him. Told him it was inappropriate. He said you were fine with it. I let out a quiet laugh, not amused, relieved. So he lied, I said. He didn't want to deal with the fallout, his father replied. So he passed it to you. That sentence landed harder than anything else I'd heard in weeks. He pulled out his wallet. How much does he owe you? No, I said immediately. This isn't your responsibility. He looked at me steadily. It is, because I enabled this behavior for years by smoothing things over instead of stopping it. And because you didn't deserve to pay for a lesson my son refused to learn. He wrote the check anyway. I hesitated, but then I took it. Not because I needed the money, because I needed the acknowledgement. As we stood to leave, he paused. For what it's worth, he said, you were right to walk away. The wedding would have been beautiful. The marriage would have been a constant negotiation with ghosts. That night, something inside me settled. Not healed, but anchored. The final piece fell into place a few days later when I heard, through mutual friends, that his ex had finally been cut off. Not out of respect for me, but because she'd stopped being useful. Because she wouldn't pay. Because the illusion collapsed once there were consequences. That's when I understood the truth I'd been circling for weeks. This wasn't about love. It was about access. He wanted me for stability, her for emotional validation. And he didn't want to choose, so he tried to force me to accept the arrangement. The moment I refused, the entire structure fell apart. I didn't feel victorious. I felt clear. I boxed up the last of his things that night, folded them carefully, methodically, not with anger, but with finality. When I reached the ring box again, I didn't hesitate. I placed it inside the box, not as a symbol of bitterness, but as proof that I'd reclaimed something far more valuable than a future that looked good from the outside. My agency. For the first time since the engagement ended, I slept through the night. No racing thoughts, no rehearsed arguments, no imagined outcomes. Just rest. And when I woke up, the quiet didn't feel empty anymore. It felt open. The fallout didn't arrive all at once. It came in waves, quiet at first, then unavoidable. The wedding date came and went without ceremony. No dress, no vows, no carefully timed walk down an aisle I'd once imagined in detail. I spent that day alone by choice. Not hiding, just uninterested in turning closure into a performance. I took a long walk that morning, let my phone stay silent in my bag, watched people live their ordinary lives while mine quietly pivoted onto a different path. And for the first time, I didn't feel behind. He, on the other hand, unraveled. Not publicly at first, at least not in a way that made it obvious, but mutual friends began reaching out, not to defend him this time, but to ask careful questions. "He's not doing well," one of them said. "He keeps saying he didn't think you'd really walk away." That sentence followed me for days. He didn't think I'd really walk away. It explained everything. He hadn't miscalculated my feelings. He'd miscalculated my limits. The story he'd told himself was simple. I'd protest, maybe cry, maybe argue, but eventually I'd fold. I always had before. This time, I didn't. And without me absorbing the impact, the consequences had nowhere else to land. His ex vanished from the picture completely. Not in a dramatic way, no final confrontation, no closure speech, just silence. She stopped answering, stopped showing up, stopped being available for emotional labor now that it came with a price tag. That loss hit him harder than he expected. Because what he'd framed as friendship had been something far more convenient, unconditional access without accountability. When that disappeared, there was nothing left to hide behind. His mother continued posting vague, passive-aggressive things online, quotes about loyalty, about forgiveness, about women who don't understand men's friendships. I blocked her, not out of anger, but because I was done being available to narratives that required my silence. A week later, he showed up at my apartment, late, unannounced, standing outside like someone hoping muscle memory would do the work for him. I didn't open the door all the way. I didn't invite him in. "I made a mistake," he said quietly. I studied his face, the exhaustion, the uncertainty, the absence of confidence I'd mistaken for depth for years. "You made several," I replied calmly. "I didn't realize what I was asking of you," he said. "I thought you'd understand." "I did understand," I said. "That's why I left." He swallowed. "I lost everything," he said. "No," I corrected. "You lost what you refused to protect." That was when he finally said it, the thing he'd avoided naming from the beginning. "I was confused," he admitted. "I had feelings I didn't know how to deal with." There it was. Not an apology, not remorse. Just truth too late to matter. I didn't argue, didn't press for details, didn't ask questions that would only reopen doors I'd already closed. "Go home," I said gently. "This conversation doesn't change anything." He stood there for a long moment, like he was waiting for permission to say more. I didn't give it. After he left, I sat on the couch and let the silence settle again. This time it didn't hurt. The social circle shifted naturally after that. Invitations changed. Names stopped overlapping. People adjusted. Not because I demanded loyalty, but because clarity has a way of reorganizing space. Those who mattered stayed. Those who didn't faded. I sold the engagement ring a few weeks later. Not out of spite, out of practicality. I used the money for something I'd always postponed. A solo trip, somewhere cold and quiet, somewhere that didn't know my story. I posted one photo when I got there, nothing dramatic, just the sky. He viewed it within minutes. I didn't block him. I didn't need to, because by then, his presence, digital or otherwise, no longer carried weight. The fallout didn't destroy me. It revealed exactly what had been holding me back. And once I saw that clearly, there was nothing left to salvage, only space to move forward. I used to think endings were loud, that they came with slammed doors, final speeches, tears that soaked through pillows and shirts. That closure meant confrontation, that if you just said the right thing, everything would finally make sense. This ending didn't give me that. It gave me something better. Quiet. Months later, when people ask if I regret it, if I wish I'd just let it go to keep the peace, I know exactly how to answer. No, because peace that requires your silence isn't peace, it's surrender. I didn't walk away because of jealousy. I didn't walk away because of pride. I walked away because I was asked to stand at the center of my own wedding and pretend I wasn't being replaced. Because I was told, clearly, that my discomfort mattered less than someone else's access. And the moment I accepted that, I would have spent the rest of my life negotiating for space in a relationship that never intended to give it freely. The wedding would have been beautiful. The photos would have been perfect. The smiles would have convinced everyone we were solid. The marriage, though? It would have been a slow erosion, a lifetime of swallowing boundaries in the name of love, a constant comparison with the past that never truly stayed in the past. Walking away cost me money. It cost me plans. It cost me the future I thought I was building. But it saved me something far more important. Time. Time I would have spent competing with ghosts. Time I would have spent explaining my worth to someone who already understood it and chose not to honor it. Here's what I learned. When someone makes you choose between your dignity and their comfort, they've already made their choice. When someone issues an ultimatum expecting you to cave, believe them the first time and call their bluff. And when someone shows you their priorities, don't argue, don't negotiate, don't wait for them to change. Believe them. I didn't lose a fiancé. I gained my clarity, and that has turned out to be the most faithful thing I've ever committed to. If this story resonated with you, thank you for staying until the end. If you've ever had to walk away to protect your self-respect, you're not alone. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments, and if you want more stories like this, slow burn, emotional, and grounded in real choices, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Because sometimes the bravest love story is choosing yourself.